U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio walked back slightly in a Sunday TV interview on President Donald Trump's remarks, saying that a ceasefire was not necessary for peace talks, a non-starter for the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. According to Associated Press, Rubio said on NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday that a possible ceasefire is not off the table, but that the best way to end the war would be through a full peace deal. Zelensky also pushed back against Trump's assertion, which aligned with Putin's preference, that the two sides should negotiate a complete end to the war, rather than first securing a ceasefire. Zelensky said a ceasefire would provide breathing room to review Putin's demands. In order for there to be a peace, the Russian side is going to have to accept that Ukraine is a sovereign country that has a right to defend itself and has a right to enter into alliances, Rubio said in an NBC interview on Sunday. How that's constructed, what we call it, how it's built, what guarantees are built into it that are enforceable, that's what we'll be talking about over the next few days with our partners who are coming in from overseas.
Now he is saying he wants a broader peace deal. We know that Ukraine, we know that European allies want a ceasefire first. Is a ceasefire now off the table, Mr. Secretary?
No, it's not off the table. I think what the president said, in fact, you just read it on the air a few moments ago, it was agreed to by all that the best way to end this conflict is through a full peace deal. There's no doubt about that. I mean, who would be against the fact if tomorrow we came to you and said we have a full peace deal and it's done? I think that's the best way to end the war. Now, whether there needs to be a ceasefire on the way there, well, we've advocated for that. Unfortunately, the Russians, as of now, have not agreed to that. But the ideal here, what we're aiming for here is not a ceasefire. What we ultimately are aiming for is an end to this war. As much as people may not like it, as distasteful as people may find it, the only way to end this war is to get the Russians to agree, as well as the Ukrainians, but the Russians to agree to a peace deal. And the minute you issue new sanctions, your ability to get them to the table, our ability to get them to the table, will be severely diminished. That moment may arrive. But when it comes, what you're basically signaling is there is no opportunity for peace at this point. So just let's put on more sanctions and allow more people to get bombed and more people to be killed. And that's what we're trying to stop. And it's really important to bring this war to an end. This war doesn't get better. It gets worse as time goes on. It gets worse. It actually threatens to spill over into other areas. So it needs to be stopped. That's why the president's made it a priority. And that's what we're focused on. Concrete actions by both sides, especially the Russian side, to bring this conflict to an end. And we're going to do everything we can to make it happen. Is it possible? I don't know, but we're going to try. We've tried. We've spent a lot of time on this issue. We have a lot of other issues to focus on, but the president's made this a priority. Well, there'll have to be some security guarantees for Ukraine, right? I mean, it's one of their fundamental demands is that if this war were to end, they have to make sure this never happens again. They don't want to get reinvaded. They don't want to wait 3 or 4 years from now and find another, war on their hands. So there's going to have to be some security guarantees as part of it. How that's structured, how that's built, what our role will be, that'll be the kinds of things we'll have to work through. But again, that is going to be a key element of this deal. And it is something that in order for there to be a peace, the Russian side is going to have to accept that Ukraine is a sovereign country that has a right to defend itself and has a right to enter into alliances with other countries to defend itself. How that's constructed, what we call it, how it's built, what guarantees are built in there that are enforceable, that's what we'll be talking about over the next few days with our partners who are coming in from overseas tomorrow for a series of meetings and in the days to come. We had a long phone call about this yesterday with several of the national security advisors from various countries in Europe.
Russia's Vladimir Putin agreed at his summit with President Donald Trump to allow the United States and its European allies to offer Ukraine a security guarantee resembling NATO's collective defense mandate as part of an eventual deal to end the 3.5-year war in Ukraine, Special U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff said Sunday. According to Associated Press Article 5, at the heart of the 32-member military alliance, states that an armed attack against one or more of the members shall be considered an attack against all members. Witkoff, who had joined Secretary of State Marco Rubio for the talks Friday at a military base in Alaska, offered few details on how such an agreement would work. But it appeared to be a major shift for Putin and could serve as a workaround to his long-standing objection to Ukraine's potential NATO membership. Witkoff defended Trump's decision to abandon his push that Russia agree to an immediate ceasefire, which Trump had set as a benchmark going into the meeting. Witkoff said the Republican president had pivoted toward a peace deal because so much progress was made.
I think the president supports a peace deal, Shannon, and he got through almost all of it in Alaska. I mean, I was personally surprised at the amount of wins that we had that day. It was right down the line. We agreed on much more robust security guarantees. The Russians agreed on enshrining legislatively language that would prevent them from, or they would attest to not attempting to take any more land from Ukraine after a peace deal, where they would attest to not violating any European borders. So we got through quite a bit, and there's a whole lot more.
So let's talk about the security guarantees, because you mentioned those. What does that mean in practicality? What is the U.S. willing to commit to that effort to give Ukraine the assurances it needs to come to the table?
It means that the United States is potentially prepared to be able to give Article 5 security guarantees, but not from NATO, directly from the United States and other European countries. That is big. I mean, really big.
Does it mean boots on the ground? What does it mean, but logistically?
I think part of the discussion that we're going to have on Monday throughout the day, because there's going to be breakout sessions there, is exactly the specifics of what the Ukrainians feel that they need. Because remember, as mediators, we were at this summit to advance the Ukrainian position, and we did that, and we did it successfully. Now it's for us to drill down on the granular details of exactly what the Ukrainians need to give them a sense of security in the future, and by the way, what the Europeans need as well. And we were fully committed to be there for that purpose.
US President Donald Trump and dictator Vladimir Putin have tentatively agreed to an air truce in Ukraine during talks in Alaska before a new round of discussions on ending the war. The Economist journalist Oliver Carroll wrote on the X social network. British journalist Carroll cites insider information. According to him, the interested parties have already reached a preliminary agreement on a ceasefire in the air in Ukraine, which should come into force before the trilateral meeting. We are talking about the negotiations between US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky with Russian dictator Putin. Editor's note. Carroll did not give any details. He only stated that on this issue, next week will be interesting. It should be noted that the ceasefire in the air means the cessation of strikes by cruise and ballistic missiles, drones on objects in the rear. Russian troops often carry out airstrikes simply on Ukrainian cities indiscriminately, trying to sow panic and fear among Ukrainians. In addition, the occupiers often attack civilian infrastructure in Ukraine with drones and missiles. And the Ukrainian armed forces carry out strikes only on military and strategic objects on the territory of the Russian Federation. Volodymyr Zelensky has previously called on Putin several times to agree to a ceasefire in the air. The Russian dictator allegedly verbally supported such a proposal. But then Russian troops again launched airstrikes on Ukrainian cities. Earlier, it became known why dictator Vladimir Putin actually needs a truce in the air. Military expert and former SBU employee Ivan Stupak told Radio NV that it would be advantageous for the Kremlin to offer the US a temporary cessation of air attacks in the war with Ukraine. The proposal is for a 10-day pause in response to Trump's peace demand, during which Ukraine and Russia would ostensibly stop using drones and missiles. Such a proposal could be aimed at Donald Trump, presenting it as a diplomatic success before the election. This could be perceived by Trump as a crazy victory. That Putin is listening, he's also in the mood for peace. Stupak explained. This could prompt the American leader to yet another delay in sanctions and duties against Russia and its partners. At the same time, military actions on the ground will not cease.